WOTW HD2 Windermere, Bud 94.1. From the attorneys Justin Clark and Associates YouHavePower.com studios, this is Behind the Law with attorney Justin Clark.
Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Behind the Law with me, attorney Justin Clark. Thank you for spending just some of your weekend here with us. I always appreciate you spending a few minutes. We've got a special hour ahead, but I want you to dial up the phones. Any question that you have, anything from accident to zoning, 321-282-1055. Plenty of information on the website, www.youhavepower.com. During the week, we focus mostly on bankruptcy, IRS problems, real estate, personal injury, and even student loan problems. But for the purposes of this show, call us for anything. 321-282-1055. You can watch the show live on Facebook or any social media platform at ATTY Justin Clark. Joining me as always, to my right. First of all, how was vacation, Mick? I gave you a couple weeks off. That's Mick Dolan over there. Orlando radio legend Mick Dolan. Mick, what's up, pal?
That was your vacation, not ours.
It's weird that my vacation was vacationing in my office, but it was, I just figured you guys wanted a couple weeks no show.
No, we love you.
You miss me?
Yes.
Get out of here.
Absolutely.
So apparently, our good friend from our sister station, 103.1 The Wolf, Skid, had more important things to do today.
It was a big
Some
high-level
client
meeting.
issue,
right.
blah, blah, blah. I don't know.
Yeah. His Indians lost last night. So,
Did they?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
But
good, he says. All right.
We have my good friend Johnny Gash here pushing the buttons, making sure the show goes out on the air.
Baby.
What's up, Johnny? How are you,
What's going on? Thanks again for having me.
Thanks for being here. I know you have other things you need to do. But,
Nothing more important than
he's
this,
got
man.
nothing.
I really don't. I really don't.
Be honest.
I'm being honest. I really don't.
I heard you're a Mets fan. Is that right?
I am.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey, 162-0, baby.
That's right.
They won you. They won the opener, right?
Undefeated.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm a Red Sox guy myself.
Rays
we got beat.
Too, right?
All right, about your Rays. So I heard. All right, so Mick, if you're watching the show, you'll see is wearing a Kansas Jayhawks sweatshirt today, or I don't know what that is.
What it is, yeah.
I have been doing the show with you for probably over a year now, and I've never heard you say one word about Kansas. But all of a sudden, they get lucky and make the Final Four, and you're here spouting off about these Jayhawks.
Well, the football team is so bad.
They're terrible.
That we just hang our heads every year. But when basketball comes, now we're talking.
I mean, that is a great fan base. That
Yes,
basketball fan base is quite incredible.
And that we do this thing called waving the wheat, where you go back and forth like this. Nothing better in all of college basketball.
Oh, yeah. I got to send out a quick get well soon to my mother, actually, who sometimes is maybe the biggest fan of the show. She had total knee replacement yesterday for the second time.
Whoa.
And that surgery still sucks.
Yeah.
You know, the hip replacement's gotten a lot better. The knee replacement's still really tough. So we wish you well.
Shoulders
still bad, too.
Yeah.
Painful.
Yes.
Very painful. 321-282-1055 www.youhavepower.com. Justin Clark with you on another edition of Behind the Law. I have a good friend joining me today. So happy he could join us, and his name's Rajan Joshi, all right? You've probably heard of him because he's had a lot of high-profile criminal cases in this town, and whenever we have a client who has a criminal issue, we always refer them directly to you. And we do that for a reason. It's because of the great trust that we have in your skill as a criminal attorney. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here, by the way.
Thanks for having me.
So criminal law to me is so foreign because it's something that we haven't ever done as a practice, but it's super important. And the emotions involved when you have a defendant who's charged with a crime, and really the pressure's on you as well. Like this guy could go to jail for a very, very long time. I mean, the emotions involved in that have to be stressful at times. I mean, how do you manage clients' expectations, and how do you keep yourself level when there's probably so many ups and downs?
Well, the most important thing is the client itself. Knowing that somebody's trusted us to really handle their life, handle the most important thing, their freedom, their being free of a criminal record. So that in and of itself is a motivation for a criminal defense attorney to do everything they can possible, leave no stones unturned, and make sure that this client is represented to our fullest capacity. So the stress is there, but the stress is a motivation.
And so when someone does first come in and they tell you about what's going on, or you see what they were charged with, I mean, you have to obviously you know the statute and what the criminal penalties could be. And obviously, as lawyers, we can't guarantee results. But how can you tell them this is what might happen? I mean, how do you really have that conversation with people?
Well, it comes from assessing the case. You know, I've been doing it now going on 18 years. So looking at a criminal charging document, I have a good blueprint of what the state has. But you never know the real case until you actually go through the discovery, go through depositions, look at the strength of the witnesses, the weaknesses of the witnesses, look to make sure the state actually has, valid stops. If they don't, then the case can end right there. So you have to let the client know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, realistically.
So when you have state attorneys, so the prosecutors or the state attorneys on the other side, how much, and I don't know the answer to this, that's why I wanted to have you on here, is how much power do they really have? And let me ask this a little bit different way. When we have an insurance case, right, and we have an insurance adjuster on the other side, they'll always say, oh, I have $20,000 desk authority. If not, I've got to go to my supervisor to get more money for your case. On a criminal case, how much power does that state attorney that you're dealing with have to dismiss the charges, reduce the charges, or when do they have to go up the chain to their bosses?
It depends particularly on the case. I mean, some cases by statute may have minimum mandatories like firearm cases. In those cases, negotiations do have limitations where they may have to go to their supervisors. High-profile cases are cases where, may have some political ramifications. But overall, they have a lot of power. They've got a lot of discretion. The law gives it to them, rightfully so. And I've seen that they usually do the right thing if you give them the right reasons to do so for the client.
How do you find most state prosecutors around here?
I find them very reasonable. I find them prosecutors, and I did the job for 4 years. The beauty of that job is if you're doing it the right way, your job is to always seek justice, no matter what that is. If it means sending someone away, that's what they're going to do. If it means dropping a case because of a bad search, then they should do that. Some prosecutors abuse their power. I have seen that, and that's why we have jury systems. We have courts to fight the cases in those situations. But for the most part, they're pretty, fair and reasonable if you give them the right reasons to be.
So I'm guessing here, and I hate to be presumptuous, but most of the prosecutors, or at least on maybe minor or misdemeanor charges, are a little bit younger than you, right? I mean, that you've been practicing 18 years. I imagine that most of them haven't been practicing that long. Do you find some of them come out like, oh, I'm going to be a badass prosecutor and really don't know what they're doing, but they just want to try to prove a point?
That does happen sometimes. It does.
And how do you kind of talk them off the ledge? How do you say, look, man, you got to chill?
Sometimes you try that approach, and if it doesn't work, you take them to trial, and you show them that the case that they believe is so strong is not so strong by getting the verdict that is in your favor.
But they'll just go to trial on it most of the time, huh?
I think they learn pretty quick.
Yeah.
I was a young prosecutor one time, came out, and sometimes you have to learn the hard way, but that's a learning process.
Isn't that where lawyers get their start in the careers as a prosecutor? Or?
A lot do. The good thing about starting out as a prosecutor is you get trial experience, and you get to go up against very experienced attorneys.
Right. Good practice.
Good practice. Yeah.
I'd hate to be the client when you're practicing. You know what I mean?
One of the attorneys in my office, Brandon Stewart, told me to tell you hello, by the way, before I forget. But he always tells me when he talks about you, when I'm saying, oh, we're going to refer Rajan that case, he'll say, he set like some kind of record on the bar exam. What the hell is he talking about? Because I've never gotten the straight answer. Apparently, you did something on the bar exam that was exceptional. Help me understand.
Modestly speaking, when I took the bar exam, I ended up scoring top 5 in the state of Florida. I actually thought I failed it, and I started crying after the exam. I got a call from the chief judge of the 5th District Court of Appeals afterwards and said, will you be the speaker at the induction ceremony of the lawyers in the 5th Circuit? And I was like, you mean I passed? He's like, no, you didn't pass, just you were top 5. So that was something took me back, but...
Pretty impressive. Behind the Law with me, Justin Clark, 321-282-1055 with special guest Rajan Joshi is here from is it Joshi Law Firm?
Yes, sir.
How do people find out more information about you? Website, phone number, if anyone has any questions.
It's www.joshi-law.com. We're on Facebook. Our phone number is 407-661-1109.
And I promise you, we're going to get to the question about to blow or not to blow? That is the question. We're going to do that later in the show, I promise, because that's really the question that we all have is if you get pulled over, maybe you had a cocktail or two, maybe you didn't. Do you blow or not blow? We're going to get to that a little bit later in the show.
I'm glad you explained that. You started off with blow and blow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew you were confusing.
All righty. Okay.
With Johnny Gash.
Maybe that's just me and Johnny.
What are your feelings on this big high profile trial that's going on here in Orlando now? The wife of the Pulse gunman shooter. What do you see there?
Well, I mean, it's a case that's got a lot of high profile, and I mean there is evidence there. It just depends on if the defense is able to convince the jury that her confession was not voluntarily given. I think that's a big part of the case, along with all the other facts that they have to go over.
We always see these high-profile trials last, weeks, 2 months, 3 months, the O.J. Simpson trial. So I think people generally think that if they're charged with a crime, they're going to go have this jury of their peers, and it's going to last a few weeks. A typical trial, though, in a misdemeanor case can last how long?
A day, half a day.
I mean, it's quick, right? It is not like one of these big high-profile trials that you see. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about if you have ever been pulled over or you ever are going to get pulled over at night. Maybe after dinner. Maybe you had a glass of wine. Maybe you didn't have a glass of wine, and the police officer asked you to blow in that little tube. Should we do it or should we not do it? Just ahead on Bud 94.1. Welcome back to Behind the Law with me, attorney Justin Clark, here on Bud 94.1. The phone number, 321-282-1055. Plenty of information on the website, youhavepower.com. You can watch the show live on Facebook or any social media platform at ATTY. Justin Clark, sitting here with my good friend and, in my opinion, the best criminal defense attorney in Central Florida, Rajan Joshi. Rajan, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you for having me, Justin.
So the question that I get all the time, even though I don't do criminal law at all, is if I get pulled over at night after dinner, maybe you have a buddy in the car who's been drinking, and maybe you really haven't been drinking, or maybe you did have a glass of wine or two, and they smell the alcohol, and the police officer says, will you please blow in this little machine? Do I do it? Or do I not do it? And I think that's the question we all have. I need you to help me through this question.
And there's no right answer I can give. Unfortunately, I'm going to give the answer kind of like a lawyer.
We have plenty of time.
But if someone's been drinking, the legal limit in the state of Florida is 0.08, and it's not high. I mean, it's pretty low. 3 drinks can get someone over the legal limit.
Absolutely.
Depending on their weight, their tolerance.
Two in my case. I mean,
1.5 for
pounds if I'm lucky.
And they tell you if you don't blow, you're going to lose your license for a year. It can be used against you in court. They have to tell you that. They say if you refuse, these are the consequences, but they never tell the consequences if you blow. If you blow over a 0.08, you're going to lose your license for 6 months anyways, and it's going to be used against you in court if it's over a 0.08. They're gonna blow up that number and show it off to the jury. So, and there are repercussions if the blow's after a specific number. If you blow a 0.15, then if you're going to work the case out, you're going to have one of those intoxilizer machines in your car that you have to blow in to start your car and blow while you're driving, an interlock device. So in my opinion, the toughest cases for a prosecutor are the cases where a person doesn't do the field sobriety exercises, which I wouldn't recommend. You're not required by law to do those silly roadside exercises.
This is the touch my nose thing.
Yes.
Right.
Walk on a straight line, stand on a leg.
I've seen enough live PD.
But the toughest cases are where someone doesn't do the field sobriety exercises, someone doesn't blow, and doesn't talk too much to the police officer, where they have the slurred voice or the person being incoherent. Those are tough cases. When I was a prosecutor, those were the toughest cases to take forward to the to trial, because you don't have any, besides maybe a video, you don't have any objective evidence. But if a person's refused to blow before in a prior DUI arrest and they subsequently refuse to blow, that in and of itself is a first-degree misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year. So
you only get one chance, huh?
Yeah, one shot.
One free ticket. Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. So,
Wow.
if I don't drink anymore, but if I had consumed alcohol to a certain level and I was in that situation where I knew I had a buzz, I personally would refuse to blow. So I guess.
So
Well, there you have it.
What is
That's the answer.
what is the deal that they take your license away for 6 months no matter what? What is it that you don't do? They take your license away.
If you blow and you blow under a .08, then that's the only way you walk away with a license. I mean, there are ways to fight it. There are now ways to get hardship license afterwards, but you still go through the same process.
Well, so how do you know what you really? It's your word against the officer, right? On site.
Yeah, that's why.
That's the tricky part. It's like,
Well, here's the deal: if you blow, this is just giving them free evidence. So if you do fight it and you do go to trial, now they have something that can they show that to the jury or not?
The actual blow? Yeah, they show,
Yeah.
they actually have it on videotape, usually at the breath test center, and they actually have the printout that they show to the jury. Now, there is a lot of litigation on the machine itself, and there are times when you can get the blow suppressed so they don't see a blow and they don't know you refuse, but that's taking a chance. You got to hope.
Now, what about this? A jury is going to like a defendant or not like a defendant. That's just natural that they're going to like a defendant or not like a defendant. So the prosecutor is going to show the videotape of how the defendant acted that night. I imagine if I'm a juror, I'm going to like the guy or gal more who was polite to the cop, who was like, no, sir, I was advised to not ever do field sobriety or not ever not ever advised to blow in the machine just because, I don't really know, but I haven't been drinking, but very polite. I think the jurors are going to like that more than the guy who's a total prick. Like, no, get out of here, cop. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, sometimes that can make or break it. I mean, sometimes the person's kindness is the strongest evidence for us as defense attorneys, saying, look at the person, and we put him on the stand, depending on case by case, but you put them on the stand, they're a nice person on the stand, they're a nice person in the video. Look, he's the same nice person. But you get somebody like you're saying who's getting out there and, getting in the cop's face, and then they get in front of a jury and they're different. When I was a prosecutor, I'd argue, can you see the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde?
Yeah.
That's that. So
Exactly. So I think a lot of people don't understand that, at least here, we have like this whole center downtown that we call it the breath center. Is that it?
Yeah.
Explain that process,
Yeah,
because people
please.
don't understand how scientific and what a real system we have for this.
Well, what happens is the officer must have probable cause to arrest a person for a DUI. That's why they have those roadside exercises. And once they develop probable cause in their mind, I mean, we sometimes fight whether or not they had probable cause. They take them to the breath test center. They've got to observe them for a certain period of time, 20 minutes, make sure they're not putting anything in their mouth. And then they make them blow into this machine, and what the machine comes out with is a magical number. And kind of explaining in layman's terms, there's infrared rays going from one side of the machine that's calculated on the other side, and if there's no interference, there's no alcohol particles interfering, it's supposed to be a 0-0. But the higher the breath volume of alcohol in there, the more it interferes. Kind of like if you have your brights on at night, you shine it on a tree, and there's no fog, that'd be a 0-0. If there's a light fog, it'd be a .08, a heavy fog coming through. But the litigation comes is that, we want to see how the machine works, get the source code, and there's been years of litigation that, they weren't turning it over to us.
So you don't blow on site. You have to go down to the center.
You have to go down to the center, yes.
And hopefully that's a nice long ride, just to make sure the body metabolizes as much as possible.
Or if you just took a bunch of shots, your alcohol level could be rising,
Oh yeah. Oh, the delayed effect.
Yeah.
Oh,
it
man.
could work in your favor. It could work again.
So the point is, don't do it. Don't drink.
But
drive.
it's a good point though. Can't they give you the little roadside deal, or they don't do that at all anymore?
They do that with minors,
Okay.
just to, if they have alcohol on their breath, under the age of 21, and then they can suspend their license.
So the ride from wherever you get arrested to downtown, I imagine, is where the breath center is?
Yeah, it's over on...
So hopefully you get busted in Buffalo and you have a nice long drive.
But then once you get there, I mean, there is a time delay. I mean, you're looking at probably at least an hour, right? Because they have to observe you for a while.
They're going to observe for 20 minutes. It's probably, I've usually seen in Orange County them blowing or being at the center within, an hour and 20 minutes of the arrest. That's not unusual. When I was in Jacksonville, sometimes it was such a big county, it'd be 3 hours, so.
Biggest city in America.
Yeah, Duval, yeah.
By acres, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, so once they get down to the breath center, they sit there and they have to be observed for 20 minutes, you say. And why do we want to do that? What could the defendant be doing that they need to watch out for?
Well, if they want to make sure they don't put anything in their mouth, they're not, they don't regurgitate anything, just make sure that they are fresh, so there's nothing that's interfering. If somebody throws up and there's any alcohol particles in their mouth, then that could make a false reading. So they want to make sure everything is there correct, and the machine actually it will pick up any interference.
And so once I get downtown, they say, okay, you're going to the breath center. That's when I say, no, I'm not blowing, right? I mean, because they're not going to do it on the roadside anymore, because that's dangerous, I guess. So when I get down to the breath center, I know you're not advising me. I'm just saying, if it were me, I get to the breath center, they're like, do you want to blow or not blow? Or how do they treat you? Do they let you know it's an option?
Yes, they have to read you what's called implied consent. Right before they offer the breath test, they will tell you, they'll just tell you, you're being asked to give a breath sample. If you refuse, your license will be suspended for up to a year, 18 months if it's your second time. And it'll be used against you in court. That's the time where a person, after they've been read their implied consent, they know what the consequences are. They can say, I will take the breath test, or I will refuse the breath test.
So now, all right, they refuse the breath test, and they're still charged with the misdemeanor DUI 1. Okay, whatever it's called. What's it called? What's a DUI 1?
It's first time misdemeanor.
First time
DUI.
All right, now. How long, typically, from that day until we actually go to a trial, if it were to come to that?
Typically about anywhere from 90 days to 5 months. It could go longer depending on if there's issues in the case, motions to suppress being filed, but it's not too long.
So your license is suspended during that time.
Your license is suspended. You can get a hardship license if you apply within 10 days and you're eligible, or you can actually fight the suspension in a separate administrative hearing. And if you lose that, you can still get a hardship within 90 days, but you got to take the DUI level 1 school. So it is possible to have a hardship in that time.
Yeah.
My name is Justin Clark. The show Behind the Law, 321-282-1055. Here with my good friend and Orlando criminal defense attorney, Rajan Joshi. Rajan, DUI penalties. We're talking about DUI, and should you blow or not blow when you get down to the breath test center or whatever they call it. What are the penalties for a DUI 1 if you go to trial and lose?
Well, the minimum penalty is probation. It's 50 hours community service, 6 months driver's license revocation. You have to do a class, DUI school, pay fines, court costs, have your car impounded for 10 days. But the maximum penalty on a first-time DUI with no crash is 6 months in jail. So, and if you blew over 0.15, you have the immobilizer in your vehicle.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Plenty more ahead, talking about penalties for DUI and other penalties for criminal charges and what you should do if you find yourself in that position. Justin Clark with you on Bud 94.1. Welcome back to the show. My name is Justin Clark. The name of the show is Behind the Law. Thank you for spending some of your weekend here with me on Bud 94.1, my absolute favorite radio station. I've got Orlando radio legend Mick Dolan to my right, as always, with his Kansas Jayhawks.
Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
Who do you guys play? I forgot.
We play, just a minor team.
Villanova.
Villanova. We already beat Duke. So.
My team is Tennessee, and we got beat by Mother, what's her face? Loyola, what's her name? Sister Jean. Sister Jean.
Yes.
So I'm glad that we could be right in the middle of their historic
isn't that
run.
Great? You in Virginia.
Oh, yeah. 321-282-1055. Johnny Gash is here. Thank you so much, my friend, for filling in for Skid today. We appreciate it.
It's always my pleasure, man.
And we're talking to my good friend in Orlando, criminal defense. I think the best criminal defense attorney in this area, Rajan Joshi. And I think Johnny brought up a good point during the break. We're talking about DUIs, and we're talking about maybe you don't blow when they give you that sobriety test, the breath test, when you get down to the breath test center. But then your license is automatically suspended. But Johnny was like, well, I've got a job. I need to get to work. What can you do in that situation if you have to get to work?
Well, the one thing was, and I should have been more clear, the hardship license that you can apply for, if you're eligible, you have 10 days to apply for it. It allows you to drive to work and school and back. I mean, very limited purposes. You can't drive to the movies or drive out and grab some, drinks or whatever, or for dinner. But you have to be eligible for it.
Mini golf?
No, that wouldn't be really a hardship. Maybe for you.
Yeah, really.
But otherwise, if you're not eligible for the hardship, you can actually fight the DUI suspension in an administrative hearing, separate than the criminal case. And I actually enjoy doing these because I get to question the officer, subpoena them in, and I use it as kind of a mini deposition to lock the officer in his testimony and lock him in so where I can file motions to suppress or go to trial. But if you lose that hearing, which you're going, the judge is a DMV officer, not even a lawyer, then you're stuck with the suspension. You can apply for a hardship before the suspension runs out, but there is going to be time of no driving.
So here on Behind the Law, it's a very honest show, right? We can kind of say whatever we want, right? And right, Mick?
Sure.
I'm a pretty honest dude.
Absolutely.
We'll talk straight with you. Let me ask you a straight-up question. How do public defenders work, and can money buy me freedom?
Well, public defenders are lawyers like any lawyer. They went to law school. They passed the bar exam. Were admitted to practice law, and it depends. I can't comment on a specific public defender. They get a bad rap because they have a high caseload. And can money buy you freedom? It's a capitalist society over here, and sometimes when people have the means, they can choose which attorney they want, and the attorney can do other stuff with financial means, hire an investigator, do depositions, maybe be able to uncover other stuff, and it depends on the attorney's caseload. What we try to do is we try and take on a lower caseload and dedicate and devote more time to each client's case. So we can go the extra mile for their clients. I don't work in volume so much for in criminal, because in criminal, the clients are coming in and, someone could be looking at life in prison. I may have to travel out of state to do depositions. And so I've got to dedicate my time and resources to specific clients.
How do I qualify for a public defender?
It depends. They have to fill out a financial affidavit, and the judge has to determine. I'm not sure what the threshold is, but they have to be below a certain economic threshold and not have assets. A lot of people do qualify.
So the public defenders, and I know a lot of them, great lawyers, fantastic lawyers, and a lot of them really dedicated to their craft. They do it because they want to help. They do it because they see so much injustice out there. That being said, I think it's pretty clear that many times they have been given a very high caseload. Have they not? Do you have any idea how many cases maybe a public defender is assigned?
Sometimes in the hundreds.
Yeah.
Sometimes
That's
a
crazy.
large amount. And a lot of times, I can't really speak for them.
Yeah.
Like you said, some of them are great people. I know them personally, and I have the utmost respect for the job they do.
Don't the great people though move on eventually? They don't stay as I mean, come on. I want to make some big money here. Come on.
I made that decision 14 years ago to move on. That was my personal decision. Some people stay in the state attorney's office because they believe in what they're doing or they enjoy doing, and I loved what I did, but I knew my calling was elsewhere. Some public defenders enjoy what they do.
Yeah.
Some, may just have to stay because of circumstances.
Right.
Do you get the sense that criminal defense attorneys who take high-profile cases that are going to be in the news a lot take these cases for free, or do they want to get paid?
Most times they want to get paid.
Okay.
There are times in the right situation, with the right client and the right circumstances that I would take a case pro bono for the cause itself, and because I believe in the client. And if it's a high-profile case, then maybe we can get the message across that what this client did is not what the media is portraying them to have done.
So I always got who's Michael Jackson? Who was his lawyer? Garagos or something like that? Does that ring any bells?
Yeah,
I always got the impression that they were taking those cases for free to help build their practice on the other side. I have no idea. I'm just guessing. You don't think so, huh?
No, not with Michael Jackson. I think he got a steep legal fee.
You think?
Well, okay, well, what about like Jose Baez and what's his name, Benjamin Crump? Those high-profile lawyers, defense lawyers that get out there, and those guys all want the big money. But did they ever take a case where they go, "It's on the house here. I believe in these guys." Yeah.
I don't know as far as Jose Baez's his arrangements with Casey Anthony, but in that case, I'm pretty sure the profile was a lot more.
How do you feel when you have a client who you've been representing and you really feel like they are innocent?
I actually have a question. When you see the jury come back, do you have a feeling? Do you know by looking at the jury if they're going to be guilty or innocent? Sometimes it is. A lot of times it is almost like I don't know what the verdict's going to be. If it's a case that could have gone either way and the jury's coming back, that moment right there as they are reading that verdict is one of the highest anxiety moments I can feel in my entire life, because I have a person standing next to me.
Yeah.
And sometimes when they say the words, I had a trial last year, and the guy was facing a lot of time, and I didn't know which way the case was going to go. I know I did the best job possible. And when they came back and I heard the words not guilty, it didn't even register for a second. I was like, oh, really? Yeah. Wait a minute. And because I was looking at this guy who's about to go away, so it is a very stressful. Sometimes sometimes a jury may walk out and they may have a smile on their face and look right you in the eyes. And sometimes you can tell they're in closing arguments, but a lot of times it's, I stop trying to guess.
It's so weird because at that moment, I mean, this defendant could literally be set free for the rest of their lives or have 20 years or whatever. It's it got to be a crazy moment. And maybe I don't have the intestinal fortitude. Is that the word for it? I don't know.
I know you as a lawyer. I know you do. I know you have the ability. That's why we send everything we have to you.
I appreciate that too.
Talking about juries, have you ever seen the show Bull on TV?
I have not.
Man, that is a sharp show. I mean,
it's a legal show?
Well, yeah.
Oh, we steer clear of those at night. The last thing I want to see.
Well, they work on the jury, not the client itself, but the jury.
Okay.
And it's pretty fascinating, really. And he's the, what was he on? I don't know. He's on another show. This guy, the actor, I can't even remember his name. I just call him Bull. Yeah. But it's a great show.
We're gonna take a little break, but afterwards we're gonna ask you about mandatory minimums. I mean, I've seen some mandatory minimums that we have in the state that are steep. I mean, 25 years, 30, something. It's incredible. And the mandatory minimums scare me a little bit, but I want to get your opinion on that. We're going to take a quick break. Justin Clark with you on Bud 94.1. Welcome back to the show. My name is Justin Clark. Behind the Law is the name of the show. One more segment ahead. Thank you for spending some of your weekend here with me. Got Nick Dolan here, Johnny Gash is here, and my good friend and Orlando criminal attorney Rajan Joshi is here as well. Mandatory minimums. What are they? What are these mandatory minimums?
Mandatory minimums are, in certain cases, there is a minimum that the judge cannot sentence a defendant to, regardless if the person takes a plea straight up to the judge or they're found guilty at trial, such as firearm cases where there's a 10-20 life. They possess a firearm, it's 10 years. They discharge a firearm, it's 20 years. And that's minimum, day per day. Or if they shoot somebody and cause serious bodily injury or death, it's 25 years, day per day minimum. And then there's drug cases that have mandatory minimums, which, there's certain cases where a person could be possessing a certain amount of drugs, such as the pain pill epidemic. That's the opioid epidemic. And if they're possessing a certain volume, a certain number, sometimes it's over 4 grams on certain medications, they're looking at 3 years minimum. And over 28 grams, certain opiates cause a 25-year minimum mandatory, whereas cocaine, 28 grams, only gives them a 3-year minimum.
Or in Dallas, maybe it's only 2 years, too. You know what I mean? It seems...
It varies by location.
I like the fact that we're trying to fight crime and all that. Don't get me wrong. I don't want a bunch of opioids or people running around with guns shooting up in the air. I don't want that either. I realize we have to fight crime here, but... we elect judges, and we have to have some faith in them to have some reasonableness. Do we not? This mandatory minimum thing freaks me out.
I agree, and in certain cases, it is called for. There's other cases where it can be abuse of prosecutorial discretion, where they'll hit a minimum mandatory, and a good person is stuck with. I had a case where a pharmacist had stole a bottle of hydrocodone. And, the amount of hydrocodone syrup there was mixed in with the other stuff came out to over 28 grams and was facing a 25-year minimum mandatory. Luckily, it fell on a very heartwarming prosecutor who heard the situation, heard my client, and ended up working it out for no incarceration. But some prosecutors would have given her.
Unbelievable. How does bond work? So I think we all get confused because you hear, it's a $100,000 bond. My mom had to put up her house, but then I hear, it was $100,000, so I only had to pay $10,000. Can you explain this bond process so we know?
Yeah, pretty much when a person is given a bond amount, what they can either put the whole amount down, like $100,000 if they have it. They can put it with the clerk of courts, and as long as the defendant showed up to all hearings, they get the money back. Otherwise, they can elect to go through a bondsman who they have to put up 10% and have significant collateral that the bondsman can go after. So if the person fails to appear, the bondsman's on the hook for the money through his insurance company, but he goes after civilly for the remaining amount.
All right, so I'm a bond company, all right, and someone has a $100,000 bond. Someone, the defendant comes in or their mom or whoever come in and they give me $10,000, 10%. But if they disappear, I'm on the hook for the whole $100,000. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's why they have bounty hunters in certain cases. They track them down.
All right, I got you now.
Exactly. Dog the bounty hunter.
Yeah. That's why they act like they care so much if they show up. I thought they were just after the 10% and they were on their merry way. Do I really get? Let's say I do appear. All right. Do I really get my money back, or does the prosecutor try to take some of that money for the state? Like say, he's got $100,000 sitting in the clerk of court, so let's give him a huge fine.
Well, if the person ends up pleading to the charge and there's money in the in the bond with the clerk of courts, then they take that whatever the fines, the court costs are, they take it out of that bond.
So it almost seems like better if you could find a bond company, because the money's not sitting there already to take, right?
Yeah, but then you may lose 10%. Yeah, that's. It is. If there's like a.
I have to do my math.
Yeah,
I have to get a calculator on this one.
If there's a $25,000 mandatory fine, then maybe go to the bondsman.
Unbelievable. So, when and how does a judge decide or determine how much your bond should be?
There's a bond schedule that is in different circuits that they use as a guidance, but it depends on the case. If the person has ties to the community, someone here from out of state will get a higher bond. If the person has a high criminal record or is a threat to the community, the higher the bond, or they can
Or
even
flight risk.
Flight risk, exactly. So.
Domestic violence seems to be a hot button topic around here because so many crazy people out there that bad things happen. But it also seems to me that there are a lot of false accusations anymore because it seems that once someone makes an accusation, one of the people are going to jail. We don't know who it's going to be, but someone's going to jail tonight. Once 911 gets that call saying he hit me or she slapped me, someone's going to jail, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes, usually.
almost every time.
Usually, yeah.
And then once I get to jail, let's say then the police officer determines that I was the one that was the aggressor, or whatever they decide there, and they take me to jail. How long am I sitting in the can?
Until you can go in front of a judge at first appearance, and usually what the judge will do is give a no contact order unless they know that the victim says that they want no violent contact, and put bond amounts and conditions to make sure that no violence occurs. Sometimes it's appropriate, and a lot of times in domestic violence cases, they are very. It is taken to the extreme in such minute cases. I mean, I've gotten about half a dozen dropped this year alone because they were. I mean, the person should have been arrested, and the victim comes forward and says, look, I don't want this going on. So I get a statement from the victim.
Heat of the moment stuff.
Yeah. Or it's a mutual fight, and whoever usually the police officer talks to first, they go on that line, and sometimes they change it. But
that's interesting. Yeah. Right.
Some cases are valid, very valid, that, domestic violence is a problem and, it needs to be handled appropriately. But when the legislature and the officials take it to the extreme and just throw a wide net, then innocent people end up suffering and getting convicted unnecessarily, and they could have been.
And it's a great way to get back at someone. Like if you just got dumped. No, I'm serious. You just got dumped, or you found out your husband was cheating on you. It's a great way to you have that button that you can push, and that's what makes me a little bit nervous. Now, also, so you go to court the next day. You go in front of a judge before you can be released. Maybe the complainant doesn't show up, so the judge has to issue a no contact order at that point if no one shows up.
Usually,
and that means if you live together, you can't go back to your house.
That's true.
And how long is that typically?
That's typically throughout the case. You can go back one time with a police escort, grab some belongings, but then no contact means you can't email, you can't text, you can't have a third party.
Even your own house.
Even your own house.
What if the complainant? Let's say I own the house and I have a girlfriend who lives with me, and she's the one that calls. And it's my house.
You got to find a new place to live.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And they can stay there.
Yeah. If they have mail coming in and they reside there.
They live there. Yeah. They're.
And what kind of penalties are associated with a domestic violence type case?
Usually, if they are convicted, they have to do a 26-week batter's intervention course. And they have to, serve probation, and that's where it gets a little extreme. Why someone who may have, in the heat of a moment, touched someone like this? I mean, that can be a battery if you touch someone, push their hand away. Those are extreme situations, but usually it's typically a 26-week batter's intervention. But then they can't own a firearm, possess a firearm, and they can be up to a year in jail.
And it's on your record.
And I don't want you to think that I'm not trying to protect victims of domestic violence, because I am. I mean, we need to. There are a lot of crazy domestic violence incidents out there. Absolutely, I am. I'm just saying I see the other side of it sometimes as well, when maybe someone was making a false accusation. Have you ever seen someone get charged for making a false accusation about domestic violence?
I have. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, when I was a prosecutor, I was very proactive in charging people who made false reports to a police officer. I had one case where a lady falsely accused a guy of almost raping her, and he was about to be arrested. The police did a thorough investigation and arrested her. It was a misdemeanor, but I punished her as a prosecutor. I sent her to jail, because had that guy who was mentally handicapped been arrested, if I was the prosecutor and I believe the charges she said, the allegations, I would have gone full force against him. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's an appropriate action I should take.
Running a law firm is difficult. Maybe this is my question to you. So being a lawyer and having a bunch of cases, having to go to court here and there, it's tough. I mean, you really have to know about all these cases. You've got to do discovery. You've got to go to trial. You've got to prep for trial. While you're at trial, there's a whole business running.
Yeah.
There's a whole business back in Maitland that's called a law firm, and you're a business owner. How do you juggle, and this is a struggle I deal with every day, juggle being that guy who is at trial and being that business owner?
I think one of the most important things which you do very, very well is you have a great support team.
Yeah.
And I think that is what runs the law firm. It's not just the lawyer, but it's the people around him. And, I've seen this from cases that I've referred over to your firm, that your firm is like a family and treats the client like people and takes care of them. And that's the most important thing about a law firm. And that's one thing I also do with my law firm is I make sure I have a strong support staff that is there to handle the client's needs. And if need be, I'm not in trial 24 hours a day. I will still return phone calls afterwards. After I get out of there, I may not be too pepped up, but
How do we contact you again?
it's www.joshi-law.com. That's JOSHI-LAW. Or 407-661-1109.
There are a lot of criminal defense attorneys who approach me about us sending cases to them, and I'm like, okay, what do you guys do? He's like, well, we mostly do DUI or, maybe something a little bit heavier. That's not you. What do you guys handle?
We handle federal cases, we handle murder cases, we handle DUIs, we handle sex cases, drug cases, all across the board.
All the fun stuff.
The whole shebang from soup to nuts over there.
Wow.
Thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you
That's
for having
Rajan
me. Thank
Joshi,
you.
everyone. Please, if you have any sort of issues criminally, reach out to me or reach out directly to him, and I will absolutely hook you guys up. I wish you very well, Mick Dolan, with your Kansas Jayhawks this weekend. Johnny Gash, thanks for filling in today, Mick. I don't know much, but I do know one thing.
What's that?
I will see you right back here next Saturday on Bud 94.1.